Well, well, another chapter, another suit of power armor. Had to get rid of that ferric dude prototype. First of all, the Stark stench was beginning to make me woozy and gave me severe headaches. And second, since Tony's death, Pepper Potts has been insisting on visitation rights. So I sold it back to the Stark Industries and used the pile of cash to buy this sweet baby. Pretty awesome, huh? The guy I bought it from was a real motivated seller. Well, he was really motivated anyways. Technically, I think the term is psychotic. But why split hairs? Speaking of which, the way he was revving up that chain axe, got the feeling he wanted to split my melon. Kinda glad I got out of there with my head still intact. Enough said. So, adventures in armor procurement aside, this bad boy is all mine now. I can do whatever I want with it. Sort of. There were some minor strings attached, like I can't change the color, or polish the brass too much, or even wear the helmet for some reason. And if I thought Stark's prototype armor was glitchy, this one is downright erratic. Heck, if I don't say prayers to it every morning and sacrifice a few pints of crimson fluid, shall we call it, every morning, this armor gets downright surly. To make matters worse, previous owner said I had to add a few skulls to the armor's trophy rack every week. Where in the warp am I supposed to get those? I mean, you don't think he meant real human skulls, do you? I mean, considering the way he was eyeing my neckline, I'm not too sure. Oh well, I found a bunch of Halloween skulls at a neighborhood garage sale. That should work, right? Guess not. That does it. I'm tired of trying to retrofit myself into other people's garbage. I'm making my own. Well, not my own garbage, mind you. I mean, my own IP, if you understand what I'm saying, it's just... nuts to it. Roll intro! Crafting your own work based on another's established IP is a tricky proposition. True, you gain a significant foothold with your audience since what you're creating is already well established in their minds through existing fiction. However, if your new creation is built upon the works of another, you must conform to the rules they have put in place. If you stray too far from the established formula, you risk alienating the very audience you wanted to appeal to in the first place. Worse yet, at any time the creator of the founding work could choose to make a fundamental change to their fiction, upending the very bedrock your work was built upon. It is, in effect, building a castle on shifting sand. One of my recent experiences with this did not happen to me personally, but to a woman who I flatter myself to call a mentor. A.C. Crispin was a wondrous author who provided incredible writing seminars, 2 of which I was fortunate enough to attend. Although she passed back in 2013, so many of her lessons live on in the minds of her innumerable students, her published works of fiction standing tall as lasting testaments to her amazing talent. With one caveat: her Star Wars novels. You see, back when Disney acquired the Star Wars brand, they made a controversial decision. They ruled, in their infinite wisdom, that all of the expanded Star Wars universe, as in anything not portrayed in the 6 films existing at the time, was now non-canon. All those works, painstakingly crafted by many extremely talented authors, approved by George Lucas himself, were now little more than fan fiction. The sand shifted, and all built upon it quaked in response. Now, to be clear, I understand why Disney made this decision, and I'm certain it was not enacted lightly. Trying to maintain the integrity of this fictional universe with a myriad of sometimes conflicting sources all demanding to be declared legitimate is a daunting task. It was quite wise to pare things down a bit to keep the narrative of this faraway galaxy somewhat manageable. Furthermore, A.C. Crispin wrote many novels based on her own worlds as well, populated with her own solid characters, so her legacy still endures. Nevertheless, I feel it is a teaching moment to see how a life's efforts can be undermined so quickly when based in the world of another, the foundation vanishing from beneath your worlds with a stroke of a pen. Now for a more personal example. Back in the dark ages of the early 1980s, when I yet toiled in the knowledge mines of the Western New York high school system, I discovered a wonderful game called Warhammer 40,000 Rogue Trader, spotlighted in an obscure publication called White Dwarf. Well, obscure at the time. This RPG miniatures game fascinated me with its depiction of power armor, its dark, grim setting, and liberal rules sporting all the fantasy trappings of D&D. At the time, Games Workshop was still finding their feet, so the offering miniatures and models to play with game was sparse, to say the least. To make up for this, GW encouraged their customers to use any miniatures they could get their hands on, offering all the fluff necessary to excuse why your Space Marines look suspiciously like knights with guns, or your Space Orcs just look like, well, orcs. What was even better were rules allowing players to create their own vehicles using scratch-built models from rubbish or broken toys from local garage sales. White Dwarf even provided loads of inspiration with articles on how to create your own hover tanks from a used deodorant stick, or highlighting their own Frankenstein creations concocted from a few off-the-shelf military model kits. Given my love for role-playing games in general, and my hobby of scratch-building models for fun, I was hooked. The first chance I got, I ordered my own copy of the Rogue Trader rulebook, along with a box of beaky Space Marines, all the way from England, since no stores in the United States stock GW products yet. Early going was difficult. This is hard to play a two-player tabletop game when nobody else you know has even heard of it. Besides, all my gaming buddies were either playing Dungeons & Dragons or BattleTech, so for a few years my fantastic grim dark creations just gathered dust. Flash forward to my army years, where I and a small group of barracks rats, as we nerds were called, had a strong BattleTech group going. After a bit of cajoling and some arm twisting, I got them to play a couple of quick games of 40k Rogue Trader. The game sold itself. In no time, we were raiding local garage sales and Salvation Army stores for broken toys, converting them into monstrosities of war, unleashing them on each other in our weekly battles in the company day room. Hey, it was a load of fun and a great way to save money. Yet another flash forward coming up, hold on! After exiting the military in Savannah, Georgia, I quickly found a great local group who were already playing the latest version of 40k, called at the time 2nd Edition. They quickly brought me up to speed on the streamlined rules, leaving much of the role-playing and scratch-built madness behind for a more focused, tabletop strategy gaming experience. I was not thrilled with all that had been lost in the transition, but I soon adjusted, building my own splinter group of the Dark Angel Space Marine chapter. Back then, I always played the good guys, or lawful neutral at worst. However, when the Chaos Codex was released, I felt the pull of the dark side irresistible. I decided to start my own bad guy army. In making this fateful choice, I insisted I should do something different, not just copy the armies of my fellow players. Looking to their Chaos Legions, I noticed one repeating factor. All their commanders were male, common thing in all 40k armies at the time, save two: the ranks of the Eldar, Space Elves, and the gangs of the Hive City Necromunda. I had no interest in playing Eldar. Their armor was too wimpy, and I really hate painting in pastels. And Necromunda was a completely different game. Nevertheless, I really wanted to bring something new to the Eye of Terror with my new army. And with that rebellious choice, Malum and Cruennis were born. I scouted the GW Necromunda miniature line, specifically the all-female Escher gang, and chose the heads for my creations carefully. I then procured their bodies with a deep dive into my 40k bit box, basically old miniatures I no longer used or extras from previously built models. After some judicious cutting with a hacksaw, and some liberal use of green stuff putty, Malum and Cruennis took form. As I painted each sister, their backstory materialized in my mind, and it was a sordid one indeed. Their father was a high-ranking inquisitor, their mother, a sister superior in the Adeptus Sororitas, or Sisters of Battle, the codex for which just had been announced but was not yet in print. The twins were the product of a forbidden love, their father subsequently lost in a horrible warp transport incident, their mother perishing while giving birth to the twins. By a bizarre twist of fate, the girls had been gifted with their father's genetically altered attributes, something that by all accounts should not have happened. Both were much taller and more muscular than the average sister, with one showing disturbing indications that she might prove to be a phenomenally strong psyker. 40k lingo for a spellcaster. Under any normal circumstances, the girls' scandalous lineage, plus their highly unusual physical attributes, would have marked them for immediate cleansing, otherwise known as execution. However, the leaders of the sororitas saw potential in the girls, particularly in boosting their ranks and possibly ushering a new era for the Sisters of Battle, one where they could serve alongside the vaunted Space Marines on the battlefield as equals, instead of merely bolstering the Imperial Guard's ranks as they currently did. This decision would prove to be a tragic mistake. Now at the time, all of this was supported by the lore sanctioned by Games Workshop. Although there were no official rules for using Inquisitors in 40k miniatures games at that time, there was plenty of fluff in the rulebooks to hint that Inquisitors were genetically modified warriors, subjected to the well-documented procedures that turned Space Marines into the gods of war that they are. And the Sisters of Battle Codex was not yet released, making their exact history relatively unknown save what was teased in the pages of White Dwarf. I did pitch my idea of Fallen Sisters to a GW representative at DragonCon, a local fantasy convention in Atlanta, and he admitted there was no reason such corrupted Sisters of Battle could not exist, eventually. So there was my tacit approval. So I charged forward, not simply with playing the game, but creating my own fictitious history for my imaginary daughters. With every word I wrote, the girls became that much more solid in my own mind. In no time, they were as legitimate to me as any officially sanctioned GW character, from Mephiston of the Blood Angels to Karn the Betrayer of the World Eaters. I was all set to turn my girls loose on the world in my own fanfiction, hoping that Games Workshop might see my work and be so impressed they would endorse my characters, making them official parts of the Dark Grim lore of 40k. It was a foolish wish on my part, and I was soon shown why. You see, as much as I love my fictional daughters of that realm of constant war, their whole existence had been built on shifting sand. Although every aspect of their lives had been carefully crafted by me, using the framework of GW's fiction to support their foundations, this was a flawed construction from the beginning. You see, none of the supporting facts that justify my twins' existence was created by me. It was all GW's intellectual property. So when they chose to change those facts, and they did, suddenly my two lovely little nightmares had no place in their lore. I could try to explain my version of their founding, why it all once made sense, but the grim dark future had changed at GW's whim, and my girls just no longer fit into their licensed world. I was crestfallen. Enter my lovely wife, the ever-present voice of reason in my life. She asked why Malum and Cruennis needed to exist in 40k at all. Sure, that's where their stories initiated, but they did not need to stay there. The girls were, after all, my own creations, with no strings attached to the copyrighted universe of any other. If I could craft the twins from my own imagination, why not build the world they lived in as well? I did not react well to this at first. What? Create a whole new universe for my twins to live in? Do you have any idea how much work that would require? How much time and energy in giving it all the necessary weight and detail to make everything feel authentic? Could I even accomplish such a feat? I had never done anything like that before. Where would I even begin? Begin with your characters, my wife said. Your girls will lead the way. And so I began with Malum, rewriting her backstory in a magical world shrouded in myths called Asbeetle. In the beginning, I knew less about this new land than she did. But this soon changed. As she explored, so the world unveiled itself to me. As she met new allies and foes, so the nature of the world was crafted. By the time I finished the first draft of the first novel, The Sorcerer's Inception, I understood this new realm much better than any world in 40k. And what's more, I had no fear of the foundation shifting on me this time, because all had been crafted on the solid rock of my own imagination. It was all my own IP, and I would be the only one to decide if changes were to be made to even the slightest detail. Well, me and my editor, if that day should ever come. Now what's interesting is Warhammer 40,000 and Games Workshop have recently experienced their fair share of controversy. I won't go into detail about it here. If you're a fan of the game, I am sure you have read GW's published statements along with the public reactions to them. I will not rehash all of that. What I will comment on is the statements some have made demanding that the lore of the game be changed to match the worldviews of some of the fans. They want the game to match their personal views with characters that match what they would place in that war-torn realm. I only wish to remind these people of one simple fact. This is not your game. It is GW's. They created this fictional world, one nobody would want to live in if they had a lick of common sense, and they get to dictate how every little thing works in their fantastic universe. You don't get to dictate anything to them. It's their fiction, their universe, their sandbox. They alone get to make the rules. Deal with it. As a GW rep said to me during the release of the 3rd edition 40k, but that's another story. Now, before you think that a purely dismissive remark, here's how I propose you deal. GW makes the rules, true enough. But the rules are altered all the time in the garages and basements of those that play the game. If you and those you play with want to change the lore, making possible what the codices and rulebooks forbid, or fail to mention, that's up to you. No GW executive is going to materialize in the game room and swipe the dice out of your hand because your Marines, Eldar, or Necrons do not conform to the GW ideal. Unless you are playing in a sanctioned tournament, something I rarely had any inclination to do, Games Workshop has no say in what homebrew rules and legends you and your friends choose to include in your personal games. Now, if that's not good enough for you, I must admit, you're in good company. As many big-budget franchises have shown in recent years, there are quite a few in Hollywood who have gained access to cherished IP only to insist on making official alterations to the established canon, upending the continuity of all that came before. This is usually explained away as merely wanting to modernize the classic works or updating the lore to become more in step with our current world. We have all seen the turmoil this has often created, with sharply divided fan bases and the coining of such terms as toxic fans, a slur applied so liberally that the hateful and the merely passionate get slathered with the same brush. My advice is the same whether you be a high-powered movie exec or an inspired fan of a favorite tabletop game. Create your own world. Stop building on shifting sand. Even if you feel everything is well grounded in the current text, the owners of that IP can change everything with a few words, making all your hard work moot. No matter how ironclad you may feel your fiction is, it ultimately exists at the whim of another, ready to topple over with a stroke of a franchise owner's pen. So I say to the independent creators out there, be brave, take the plunge, make your work wholly your own. You can certainly use an existing franchise as inspiration, but when it comes to the rewriting stage, scrap that existing IP and let your own creativity shine through. Win or lose, your final draft will be your own, with no permissions or apologies required to anyone else. Even if it's only enjoyed by you and your friends, you will still have achieved something very few can ever claim to have accomplished. You created your own world. Furthermore, you will never have to worry that someone else can negate a single word that you wrote down. You decide how every detail works in your fictional universe and nobody else. You have created something truly original. And to Hollywood, I would add that if you don't like the original piece of work, don't purchase it. You are buying that franchise because of the existing fan base, attracted by the quality work of another. No matter how dated you may feel that work is now, if you radically change it, you will turn that very fan base against you. This is not to say that you must ape the original. You certainly can craft something new based on the existing beloved tale. But you must remain true to the feel of the original, color within the lines of that existing framework. If this is too restrictive, or you simply cannot rein in those contemporary messages you must get out, then leave the existing IP alone. Create your own mythos, and if your new fiction is as powerful as you believe, you just create a whole new legend that others will want to tack their stories onto. At least, that's what I'm attempting to do. And I wish all independent creators out there, on a similar path as mine, all the luck in the world. We have had some awesome examples come up lately, and I am very hopeful more will appear. I am drawing so much inspiration from these stunning successes. Just know I am in there swinging with you, forging my own fantastic worlds, trying to bring some joy into the lives of my audience and make a buck or two while I'm at it. Well, that's all I have for you today. Go away now. What the hell? The Critical Drinker? What are you doing here?
Oi, that's my sign-off line, you d***. I'm gonna find out where you drink and you're a f***ing dead man.
Now, hold on. That was all done out of respect, you know, it was kind of an homage. Alright, fair enough. Hey, I got a few bottles of whiskey here. We'll say we have a few drinks, kick back, and talk about, books, movies, 40K, whatever you like. Yeah, see, I thought you'd like that idea. You gonna share any of that?
Take off!